The U.S. Navy has finally acknowledged that videos appearing to show UFOs flying through the air are real. They don't call them UFOs; they call them unidentified aerial phenomena. The several videos they're talking about were recorded years ago by fighter pilots. Then in 2017, they were made public by the New York Times. More now from our Randy Kay.
It's rotating.
Images of that rotating thing captured by U.S. Navy sensors locking in on the target. Commander David Fravor saw it firsthand during a training mission, describing it like a 40-foot-long tic-tac, maneuvering rapidly and changing direction.
As we both looked out the right side of our airplane, we saw a disturbance in the water and a white object north.
The object was first sighted in 2004, then similar objects again in 2015. Footage of the sightings, declassified by the military, weren't made public until December 2017 by the New York Times and a group that researches UFOs.
There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA. My gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 100. Oh, dude.
This was extremely abrupt, like a ping pong ball bouncing off a wall. The ability to hover over the water and then start a vertical climb from basically zero up towards about 12,000 feet and then accelerate in less than 2 seconds and disappear is something I had never seen in my life.
The Navy says it still doesn't know what the objects are, and officials aren't speculating. A Navy spokesman simply confirming to CNN the objects seen in the various clips are unidentified aerial phenomena, or UAPs. The UFO reports were first investigated by a secret $22 million program, part of the Defense Department budget, that investigated reports of UFOs. The program has since been shut down, but it was run by a military intelligence official who told CNN they found compelling evidence that we, quote, may not be alone. Randy Kay, CNN, New York.
In the language of the U.S. Department of Defense, these are unidentified aerial phenomena, videos which add fuel to the belief of some we are not alone. The first incident was filmed off the California coast in 2004, an oval shape hovering, and in the words of the Navy pilot who recorded this, not behaving by the normal laws of physics.
Oh, that's them, is it? It's not. Well, if there's a thing.
The 2015 pilots flying off the east coast of America spotted this.
They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west. Oh, dude.
Again, its speed and movement apparently astounding experienced aircrew.
I do. Well, if there's a thing, it's rotating.
That same year, racing across the surface of the ocean, something that it took some skill to capture. All of these videos have been leaked in the past, but the US government now confirms they are genuine. The statement, the Department of Defense, said it was releasing the videos in order to clear up any misconceptions by the public on whether or not the footage that's been circulating was real or whether or not there is more to the videos. The aerial phenomena observed in these videos, they say, remain characterized as unidentified. Those who've actually been to space are skeptical about what the videos reveal.
These objects are probably some kind of secret military program, and what these pilots saw were real. They saw them, and they filmed and photographed them, and the Pentagon, I'm assuming, declassified them because there was a lot of speculation going out there. They had already been leaked, so why not come out and say, okay, these films are genuine, they do exist, but we don't know what they are.
Of course, the US has a long history of reported UFO sightings. This image, captured by a couple in Oregon in 1950, regarded as one of the most significant. They were certain this was a UFO. And the Nevada desert continues to attract those who believe, seriously or not, that Area 51 houses crashed alien spacecraft and their occupants. But with the world gripped by more earthbound concerns right now, these videos will, for many, confirm what they've always believed, that the truth is out there. Greg Milam, Sky News, Los Angeles.
following is a conversation with Commander David Fravor, who was a Navy pilot for 18 years, commander of the Strike Fighter Squadron 41, also known as the Black Aces, a squadron of 12 airplanes consisting of several hundred people. He's also famously one of the people who with his own eyes saw and chased a UFO, an identified flying object in 2004 that is referred to as the Tic Tac, and the incident more formally referred to as the USS Nimitz UFO incident. His story, corroborated by several other pilots, from my perspective as a curious scientist and an open-minded human being, is the most credible sighting of UFO in history, at least that I'm aware of. He's a humble, fascinating, and fun human being to talk to. I put out a call for questions on Reddit, many other places, and tried to ask as many of the questions that people posted as I could. And overall, I really enjoyed this conversation, and I'm sure if the world wants us to, and if there's more questions to be had, we'll talk on this podcast again. Quick summary of the sponsors: Athletic Greens, ExpressVPN, and BetterHelp. Please check out the sponsors in the description to get a discount and to support this podcast. As a side note, let me say that the world of UFOs and UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena, and aliens in general is foreign to me because of the high ratio of outlandish conspiracy theorists to actual hard evidence. I'm a scientist first and foremost, but an open-minded one, often looking and thinking outside the box. I'm often disheartened by the closed-mindedness of the scientific community, and in equal part, I'm disheartened by the lack of rigor and big scientific inquiry and study on the part of the conspiracy theorists. I believe there's a line somewhere between the two extremes that more inquisitive minds should walk. I think we humans know very little about our world, what's up there among the stars, and the nature of reality, and the nature of our very own minds. The path to understanding can only be walked humbly. The very idea that there is a possibility that David witnessed a piece of technology, whether human-made or alien-made, that moved in the way it did, should be inspiring to every scientist and engineer on this earth. There may be propulsion and energy systems yet to be discovered that, once understood and mastered, will put distant galaxies within reach of us human beings. Paradigm shifts in science and leaps in understanding can only happen, I think, if we open our eyes and allow ourselves to dream, to think from first principles, and remove the constraints on innovation placed on us by the scientific conventions and assumptions of prior generations. If you enjoy this thing, subscribe on YouTube, review it with 5 stars on Apple Podcasts, follow on Spotify, support on Patreon, or connect with me on Twitter at Lex Friedman. As usual, I'll do a few minutes of ads now and no ads in the middle. More and more, I'm trying to make these ad reads unique and interesting and less adsy, more personal, but I give you timestamps so you can skip. But still, please do check out the sponsors by clicking the links in the description. It is honestly the best way to support this podcast. This show is brought to you by Athletic Greens, the all-in-one daily drink to support health and performance. I drink it every day to make sure I'm not missing any of the nutrition I need. Now, let me take a hard left turn and talk about fasting. I fast often, sometimes intermittent fasting of 16 hours and then an 8-hour eating period of 2 meals, sometimes 24 hours, that's one dinner to the next. I've been even considering doing a 48 or 72-hour fast that some people I look up to have done. People who have done it tell me that outside of weight loss and the different health benefits, it's a chance to meditate on the finiteness of life. Not eating somehow is a reminder that we're mortal, that every day is precious. I certainly experienced this with the 24-hour fast, and I think it goes even deeper for the 48, 72, and even week-long fast. Anyway, I always break my fast with Athletic Greens. It's delicious, refreshing, makes me feel good. So go to athleticgreens.com/Lex to claim a special offer of free vitamin D for a year. Again, go to athleticgreens.com/.
It's the same. The hierarchy is actually based on seniority at the school, not necessarily rank. So when the tactical decisions are made, which are based on fact and trying things out in the Fallon ranges, they set this the top X number of folks that have been there seniority wise, and I mean time wise, are the ones that actually make the decision. And when the door, you may not agree, but when the door opens and everyone comes out from the staff, they all speak the same language. And it has to be that way, which is why the school has been so effective since it was founded. So it's just it's an incredible group of individuals.
So there's a bar of excellence that that the instructors demand.
Oh, very much so, and they're held to it. So it's not a, hey, I'm now an instructor, so I can do what I want.
The eyes of the world now look into space, to the moon, and to the planets beyond.
On the 25th of May, 1961, President John F. Kennedy of the United States of America committed the resources of his nation and launched Project Apollo, the greatest technological undertaking in the history of mankind.
I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal before this decade is out of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the earth.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11.
This was the race to space, working to beat the Russians. The enthusiasm was absolutely tremendous.
People were absolutely glued to their televisions. It was a transformative event in human history.
The Eagle has landed.
1/5 of humanity watched Neil Armstrong's footsteps in 1969.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. For one priceless moment in the whole history of man, all the people on this earth are truly one.
But only 2 years later, in 1972, public and political interest in Apollo had dwindled. NASA was forced to cancel their last 3 missions, making Apollo 17 man's final mission to the moon. Astronauts Eugene Cernan, Harrison Schmitt, and Ronald Evans were the 3 brave men chosen to fly NASA's final mission. They have been written up in history books and acknowledged by the space and scientific communities, but have never received the public recognition they truly deserve. In Apollo 17's voyage to the moon was the crowning glory of man's lunar exploration.
Apollo 17 broke so many records.
This has got to be one of the most proud moments of my life, I guarantee you.
The crew spent 3 days on the lunar surface. Their moonwalks lasted 8 hours. They covered a greater distance than any other mission.
The scientific legacy of Apollo 17 has been enormous. Had Apollo 17 not happened when it did, I shudder to think really what textbooks would have to serve even now about the early history of the solar system.
Yeah, I covered ground like a kangaroo.
Apollo 17 did mark the end of an era. Since then, we haven't travelled into space as far.
Apollo 17 is the hidden jewel of the US lunar space program.
The world knows how the Apollo program began, but very few truly understand how it ended. This is the remarkable story of the determination and courage of a generation. A tribute to 3 brave astronauts and the thousands of men and women behind them during the final days of NASA's Apollo program.
Here man completed his first exploration of the moon.
In 19, President Kennedy launched the Apollo program. The space age was only in its 4th year. The commitment of sending a man across the hostile ocean of space to the moon was bold but necessary. America urgently needed a powerful demonstration of its technological superiority to convince the world that it could still contain the threat of Soviet aggression.
I think the Americans were very confident that they had a much superior system. They were looking towards the Soviet Union as a pretty backward society. And then all of a sudden, on 12th of April 1961, Yuri Gagarin became the first human being to orbit the planet. That put the Americans, certainly at a cultural level, into a bit of a panic. It's fair to say that if the Americans had put the first human being into space, then we wouldn't have had the political drive for success that culminated
A task force of 400,000 top scientists and technicians that over the next 7 years would develop the vast spectrum of technologies needed to put a man on the moon.
I got involved in the Apollo principally because of my, I think, obsession with spaceflight. I started with reading down Daring Eagle, like a lot of people did, and then there was an advert in the Daily Telegraph which said they were looking for people to work on the Apollo program in the States. And I thought this was just the bee's knees. So I applied and got a job, and I thought the guy had gone to heaven. Everybody who worked on Apollo was so enthusiastic. Of course, it was the race to space, and it was just magic.
The involvement in the Apollo program was really a fantastic thing. It seemed that almost anything was possible. I worked for Lockheed Electronics Company, and I supported the Guidance and Control Division laboratory. It was exciting at times, it was scary at times, but working on it gave a sense of achievement.
Kennedy's dream was finally realized in July 1969 when Apollo 11 touched down on the lunar surface, marking man's most significant accomplishment in the history of exploration. Photographs of flags and footprints were beamed around the world. America's prestige had been re-won, and they established themselves as the world's superpower. Politically, the race to beat the Russians to the moon had been won, but NASA's scientific mission was just beginning. Over the next 2 years, their confidence and proficiency in lunar exploration went from strength to strength. But in 1970, despite this monumental achievement, the 10 proposed missions were cut short, making Apollo 17 NASA's final lunar mission.
The public was losing interest because they just saw people going to the moon time and time again, apparently doing the same things, not realizing what science was being done. So with a lack of public interest, the government started to lose interest. Scientifically, it's a tremendous loss. And had 18, 19 and 20 been allowed to continue, then there's no doubt that our knowledge of the moon and the history of the early solar system would be much bigger now than what it is, have those missions continued. So scientifically, there was every reason to continue them.
If Apollo 17 was to be the last visit to the moon, NASA needed to make it count. NASA's growing confidence in supporting longer operations meant that Apollo 17 would become the most productive lunar mission of the entire program.
Apollo 17 was a mission of superlatives in so many ways, and it broke so many records. The crew spent 3 days on the lunar surface. Their moonwalks